So welcome to the Secure Dynamics TechCast. Today I have with me for the first time Venki Rangachari, who is Vice President and Head of Global Architecture at Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Welcome, Venki.
Thank you. Thanks, Ashwin.
Absolutely. So I want to start off with something that I think is obviously in a lot of people's minds, especially in IT right now. Every organization is a IT organization, whether they like it or not, which is one of the things that this pandemic has taught us is adaptability and survivability and pivoting, right? So, from your perspective, given your role inside of HP, but also looking across your peer group, across other the larger community, what sorts of skills have you seen been the most valuable and useful? Not just get us through this, but also like whatever the post new normal looks like.
No, I think the pandemic, has accelerated a concept that we already knew that worked, right? Work from home, work for technology, because you don't need to be in the office
Yep.
to neither develop software, not to collaborate, right? And I think with this new normal, certain trends have accelerated, right? One would be with the pandemic. Obviously, the one that comes to mind for all IT people is the whole idea of business continuity, right? We just need to keep the business up and running. We might not need to be in the office, right? And so that's one piece. The other piece is improving the collaboration and employee engagement, right? We believe that this is the future of work. Even post pandemic, 50 to 60% of our workforce will continue to be as what we call as the edge, right? An edge could be a home, or it could be a remote place, right? It could be traveling, right? And so the ability to provide that collaboration, to provide that employee engagement, to provide the rich features of video conferencing to the employees, is a critical aspect, I think, of the new normal. These are new skills. Obviously, in the past with face-to-face, we always had that face-to-face conversation in the office, but the ability to do that over a virtual medium has given a horizon to new skills in IT workplace.
So you mentioned something that I think lots of organizations, if I'm generalizing, apologize for that, but engagement is something that many organizations struggle with, right? And one of the things that you mentioned, work from home initially, it dramatically increased efficiency. Commute times were short. You would go in and out of meetings. You don't have these water cooler conversations. But now that we're in it, and looks like we're going to be in it for a while, your mention of engagement is something that how have you seen again forward-leaning CIOs, VPs of IT, who are truly getting to a point of realizing that yes, Zoom fatigue is real. Yes, not having these back-to-back virtual meetings throughout the entire day is going to burn people out, right? So in some sense, both within an IT organization, but also the customers that you serve, aka the broader enterprise population.
So, there was an interesting article from, I think, Harvard Business Review on human behavioral works, right? And the effectiveness of remote teams and remote meetings. That research found an interesting piece is that while remote work can increase productivity, an overload of meeting can actually decrease employee engagement.
Hmm.
Employee engagement works if you have small bursts of communication. Asynchronous communication needs to be as effective as synchronous communication. So Zoom fatigue is real. It is a very important medium to have that face-to-face conversation, but it needs to be balanced with asynchronous communication, with burst of communication, so that the employee engagement is there, right? Also, the second thing that I see and I'm passionate about is the fact that the employee engagement medium that a company chooses needs to be the one where they spend the most amount of time doing the daily work. You know, um, in the past decade, we have called that an intranet, where people go to a portal, look at HR policies, look at company videos and other news. And a lot of people spend a lot, a good amount of money and trying to do, get people to go visit the portal.
Yep.
That paradigm has changed on its head, right? So if you're going to spend time on Zoom, if you're going to spend time on Teams or Slack or whatever medium, collaboration tool that you use, that is where you need to be fed the employee engagement, right? So if you're approving your expense reports, or if you're filing for a PTO request, or if you're a salesperson and checking your CRM system, right? And so, depending upon your functional work, you are engaged with an enterprise application at work. And I think an ideal employee engagement solution should be that weaves in all these enterprise systems together, including your conferencing and your collaboration systems, so that it gets into one experience. I mean, as opposed to going to a place to go get news, it just happens to just come on a screen, when I'm doing Zoom. So I think how employee engagement will be in the new normal.
No, it's very true. You're right. I mean, it's almost like IT needs to be where employees are rather than the other way around. So that leads me to my last question, which is what sorts of skills that were extremely relevant or important, let's say pre-pandemic, are less so right now? And conversely, what are the new skills that you are seeing will keep IT organizations more successful going forward?
I think certain skills that come to mind, obviously, agility is key, right? I mean, transformation, digital transformation has accelerated with the pandemic, right? And with agility, the ability to have more of a DevOps mindset, call it even DevSecOps mindset, right?
Mhm.
To accelerate that. That is a skill that I think will be accelerated with the pandemic, given remote teams. Um, ability to uh, ability to collaborate in asynchronous mechanisms, again, will also be accelerated. And I think security, right? I mean, other things is that the perimeter for security is our home right now, right? We're all working from home, so that's a new normal, and that's a new perimeter, right? And so the ability to think about employees as cloud-based in a workforce is gives sets a new paradigm from a cybersecurity perspective, right? So these are some of the new skills, and from a user experience. This journey already started, right?
Mhm.
Um, the whole idea of customer experience and user experience have penetrated into enterprise applications, right?
Yep.
Users in a remote world, users in this new normal world require that rich user experience that can enable that interaction and collaboration, right? And so UX and CX becomes a critical part of our fabric while we build and design these new applications.
Great. Yeah. I mean, I think that whole piece, I was talking to a CISO the other day, and he was talking about how the consumer experience, now that people are at home, it's almost like, hey, um, TikTok has a certain experience and you see it and you get it. And then you have these traditional enterprise apps where you have to go through these 5 different clicks. So they're saying now you need consumer grade experience on enterprise apps. And I had never thought of it that way, right? Do you agree with that?
No, absolutely. I think people look at the consumer apps, right, or social media apps, and that need is definitely reflected on enterprise apps, and it needs to have that ease of use. It needs to have that ability to get the functional work done, but in the shortest possible time, right? So I think those are critical needs from a user experience perspective as well.
Great. Again, thanks for your time. I know these are uncharted waters, and I know we're all trying to navigate through that. So, thanks for sharing your thoughts and your learnings. I'm sure the viewers and the listeners can appreciate that. Thanks, Venki.
Sure. Thank you.